also the fact that I would be able to share my thoughts on precarity, displacement, and trauma with such an esteemed audience today. That is one more incentive for me. So, over this series of lectures that Sir has scheduled over the next 5 days would be on narratives of precarity, displacement, and trauma, literary and cultural explorations. So we would be talking about how the narratives from the global south, focusing specifically from on South Asian narratives, how these narratives not just portray but navigate these themes of precarity, which is right quite seen these days. Precarity, displacement, and the induced trauma and the impact of such phenomena on the memory of humans. So today we will just I will just introduce these aspects of precarity, displacement, and I would really want all of you to bring in your own inputs as well. Um, so we'll begin with a brief introduction to the narratives of the global south. So the landscapes of the global south are marked with histories of colonialism, warfare, economic instability, forced displacement, and socio-political upheavals, whether it was the 1947 partition or the 71 Bangladesh Liberation War or the Sri Lankan Civil War that went on for 2 decades, or more than 2 decades almost, or the exodus of a section of the population of Kashmir from their region. uh, all these and the ongoing displacement that we are witnessing even now, we can say that the global south have been the hotspots of wars and conflicts, political violence, um, since decades, and people fleeing Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, all these just substantiate this argument. Um, and all of these upheavals or phenomena, as we call it, they have contributed to this traumatic narratives of precarity. Literary and cultural texts, therefore, originating from the global south, from these regions, are powerful sites of resistance, testimony, and memory, articulating the lived realities of the communities who have been pushed to the peripheries. These narratives not just portray but also navigate the themes of loss, resilience, identity, as in the face of as humans are encountering systemic oppression. Precarity is vulnerability as experienced by certain section of human population who are subjected to political and economic instability. We will come to the theorization of precarity after some time. Um, for now, let's just understand precarity as a sort of a vulnerability that is experienced by not all humans, but however a certain specific population groups. In the global south, especially, precarity is entwined with the histories of neocolonial extraction, global capitalist inequities, as well as the post-colonial state violence. Uh, Here, I can give you the example of Arundhati Roy's the Ministry of Utmost Happiness, which was published in 2017, as well as since we are talking about global South right now and not specifically South Asia, so I would also allude to Chimamanda Adichie's Half a Yellow Sun, which was published in 2006, which depict lives which entangled in precarity, where political violence and economic marginalization shaped human existence. Now, why these narratives? These narratives expose how precarious conditions uh, has precarious conditions have disproportionately affected certain population groups, especially the people who are always displaced, who are constantly experiencing displacement, and apart from that, even indigenous population groups and even and women also. Thereby, these narratives challenge the hegemonic power structures and the privileges that is sort of embedded in the state nation state discourses. Displacement, whether due to war or climate change or economic hardships, any reason for that matter, is a concern, is a defining concern of the narratives that are emerging from the global south. Um, but this displacement is not just physical in nature, it is cultural, it is linguistic, because these displaced individuals uh, navigate new geographies while retaining ties, while trying to retain their ties with their homeland. And writers from the global south have constructed their narratives in such a manner that reflect their instabilities, of the dislocated lives. Trauma is a consequence of historical and contemporary violence, which is a pervasive theme in the narratives of the global south. Uh, Whether it's Beyond Vera's The Stone Virgins or Alexis Wright's Carpinteria, trauma we see, grief and trauma they are embodied and they are transmitted across generations. Trauma theorists like Kathy Karath, Shoshana Feldman, Dory Lobb, they have, on several instances, have argued that um, trauma disrupts linear narratives, and therefore the literatures that are emerging from the global south, or that have emerged from the global south, often reflect these experimental forms, which are non-linear storytelling, polyphonic voices, intertextuality. We can go into these details when we do the narratives in the key text, discuss the key text tomorrow. However, apart from narratives, even all other kinds of cultural productions, whether it's films or performance art, they also have engaged with trauma by reimagining history and reclaiming the indigenous epistemologies. Now, literature or these cultural okay, I'm sorry. I'll just slow down my pace then. Um, okay, so literature or cultural production, like films or performance art, as we are discussing, they provide new ways of thinking about and responding to the experiences of trauma. Literature, these narratives of precarity uh, serve as that window which open up on traumatic experiences, because it is literature which talks about trauma indirectly and in surprising ways. How literary approaches bring to us an understanding of trauma is not through a straightforward acquisition of facts, but it is a process of discovering how our conscious memory, as well as conscious understanding, as well as our memory, often fail to decipher these traumatic experiences. That means we consciously often are not able to logically try to understand or why certain things are happening with us, or why this traumatic event is, or how to overcome this traumatic event. Or sometimes even we need to internalize or process the trauma, from an experience. So literature is that vehicle which replaces our conscious understanding of in a time to understand any kind of experience that is traumatic in nature. And to supplement here, I have a few literary quotations. The first and foremost would be the a very famous sentence from Arundhati Roy's The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, where she says that, and I quote her, normality in our part of the world is a bit like boiled egg. Its humdrum surfaces, uh, its humdrum surface conceals at its heart a yoke of egregious violence. So what Roy is trying to, you know, uh, state over here, is that um, the fragile normalcy of life that we see on the surface often tends to hide the systemic violences, the oppression, and the instability, the insecurities that color our lives. And and she talks about the lives of people who are peripheral, who are not a part of the civil society but political society. Also, Mohsen Hamid in his Exit West says that we are migrants through time. Hamid universalizes the phenomenon of displacement, that even though we might be located in our homeland, even then he links the historical and the contemporary migratory trends and patterns, and emphasizes on the transience of human existence. And that's why he says that we all are migrants through time. May not be physically, we might not be physically dislocated, we might not be displaced, but nevertheless we are migrants through time. I have a few more quotations, but I'll just talk about one more. It is Manto's Manto had in Toba Tek Singh. There is a line, and I quote again: "In the middle, on a bit of earth that had no name, lay Toba Tek Singh." So Mando, of course, is referring to the partition, the horrors, where the protagonist of his art is final has found the final resting place, and it's symbolizing the disorientation and the rootlessness of those caught in the violence of the historical upheaval. Um, So the questions that needed to be, interrogated or researched are that how do different narratives from the global south portray the relationship between precarity, belongingness, identity? How language plays, what role does the language play in either reinforcing or alleviating the precarious conditions of the displaced individuals? How do different literary techniques, whether it's the fragmented narration, whether it's usage of magic realism, or non-linear storytelling, all these aspects, how they shape our understanding, the reader's understanding of displacement and induced precarity. And but the crucial question is that whether literature can serve as a form of resistance against the structures that create migrant precarity. Well, therefore, what I propose to explore uh, and in this series of lectures is that we might analyze that the experiences of the displaced individuals and population groups and the induced precarity, the insecurities in the narratives of the global south, especially focusing on especially focusing on the contemporary as well as South Asian literary and the contemporary narratives that are emerging from the South Asian literary and cultural setting. The key objective is to go beyond the human rights abuse discussion and the violence uh, that have been primarily formulated in the Western knowledge systems. Because I believe that we need to scrutinize the issue of the denial of rights in the context of the displaced in South Asia, that the global South. And global and South Asian studies as a field has delved into the concept of situating vulnerability, forced displacement, and the matter of fundamental human rights within a transformative decolonial framework. Hence, to address the issue of precarity, it is necessary that we critically examine the notion of human and explore a geopolitical domain that surpasses the modern nation state structures of the neocolonial that perpetuate neocolonial regime. Therefore, the issue of displacement and human rights abuse, as reflected in the narratives of precarity, becomes a significant indicator of how we can redefine the nation state and its biopolitical borders to form new communities of or to understand that there are humans who are not included in the modern nation state structures, and that would better reflect the inherent diversities that color the precarious terrain of the global South, or the South Asia that we are talking about. Uh, Now, talking about precarity, there are, of course, the concept of precarity has been widely discussed, whether in across various disciplines, literature, sociology, philosophy, political theory. But different scholars approach this concept of precarity from varying perspectives. But one commonality is that they collectively emphasize on instability, vulnerability, and the erosion of rights in economic, political, social spheres. And according to them, these are the indicators of precarity that humans are facing today. Uh, in this today's introduction, I will allude to only three thinkers, namely Judith Butler, Guy Standing, and Simon Deering, who have had immense contributions in this field of precarity and marginalized. Um, Judith Butler, uh, Judith Butler defines precarity as a condition of heightened vulnerability that is politically produced. And Butler also distinguishes between precariousness and precarity. Now, precariousness, she states that it is a universal condition. Precariousness is a universal condition it is natural. Precariousness can be experienced by any individual, by any human, due to a certain sense of vulnerability, and which can be induced by any a kind of loss or death or even some injury. So precariousness is natural and it is universal in nature. However, precarity, Butler states, is politically or socially induced, and it is disproportionate. It affects population groups disproportionately. And it is this condition that pushes a certain section of human population group to the peripheries. They are marginalized. So precariousness and precarity are two different concepts, according to Butler. And she further argues that precarity, the nation states and the institutions that are created by nation states, they sustain precarity. They create precarity and they sustain precarity by controlling access to rights, resources, and even legal recognition. And she gives the examples of migrants over time, and especially refugees, stateless population groups, undocumented migrants, and even people belonging to the LGBTQ plus community, as well as the racial minorities who encounter this systemic oppression, and who are systematically deprived and of security and any kind of protection, making them more exposed to violence and social exclusion. In Butler's framework, borders also function as instruments of precarity, where people who are transgressing or migrating or inhabiting the border spaces, they are the ones who face this precarity, and they are always perpetually in the mode of displacement. They are denied a legal recognition, and of course, if there is no legal recognition, they also lack the right to sustain themselves, the right to work, or the right to healthcare, or the right to any kind of mobility, whether it's social mobility or any kind of mobility. They are more prone to state violence. They are more subjected to state violence, because border enforcement treats these displaced individuals as security threats rather than humans. And they are excluded from any kind of recognition. Even mourning, Butler says that certain deaths, when these people die, there is no such state, apology or anything. There is no such mourning when refugees or people who are in perpetual displacement, they encounter deaths, because those losses are ungrievable, and because their lives have never been fully recognized. Their presence were never recognized by the nation state. And Zygmunt Bauman uses the term wasted lives for such for that kind of a phenomena which Butler is uh, describing. And there are certain uh, I'll allude to Sharon Bala's The Boat People over here, where we see that how illegal, I would not use the word illegal, but rather undocumented individuals, people who are in displaced, and people who are not in possession of papers. Uh, they are just survivors. They are not elite migrants. So I would also refrain from using the word migrant here. Uh, they are they face a legal, they are always trapped in a legal limbo. They do not have papers, they are not recognized, and therefore they cannot achieve stability in life. And precarity in this context, in their context, is sustained through this kind of legal exclusion. Since they do not have papers, they are not recognized by the nation state. Um, okay, the second theorist, I will come to that. Hiba, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I will come to the theorist. I'm just talking about, I'm just alluding to one of the narratives, which is called which is called The Boat People and the author is Sharon Bala. This is a novel. Um, yeah, so precarity in this case is as I say, it is sustained through this through this mode of legal exclusion. And people who have been already relegated into this sphere of being without papers, they are never identified. They do not ever, they can never stamp their recognition, whether it's by the host nation or at the in the homeland, nowhere. Understandably, they do not exist in data also. Uh, I will quote Butler. She writes in Frames of War, when is life grievable? Um, Precarity, and I quote her, precarity designates that politically induced condition in which certain populations suffer from failing social and economic networks of support and become differentially exposed to injury, violence, and death. So Butler, this quotation summarizes what Butler has been, arguing, that it's only a specific population group who face these inequities, and they are systematically pushed to the peripheries, and that renders them precarious. Of course, they do not have rights, they do not have recognition, they do not have economic stability. So the only thing that looms large in their predicament is this sense of precarity and and trauma that is induced through this precarity. One second. Sir, Puneet, sir, are you trying to call me?
No, ma'am, it's my mistake. Please carry on.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Uh,
Yes. Shall we? Yes. Shobna Singh.
yeah,
Yes,
ma'am,
ma'am.
there is one request that when you are changing the slide, please change the slide according to the lecture which you are giving so that we can connect very well.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. However, today I have not prepared the slides accordingly to what we are discussing. It's since it's an introductory lecture, so I had put forward a few thoughts, and yes, they are there in my slides. However, these slides will also be continued in the over the next few days. So it's one second. So yes, it's not really whatever I'm saying. That thing is not there on the slide. So the slides, but of course they are related. They are thematically related. Uh, but I'm not exactly either reading from the slides, or the discussion is will be a bit different from what is there on the slides. Actually, the definitions and concepts would be there on the slides. However, I the discussions are much more elaborate than what is there on the slides. So kindly bear with me. But I shall keep this thing in mind. So for the next from tomorrow onwards, I'll put certain things on the slide as we discuss it. I hope that's okay. Okay. So Simon During, he's another theorist, a cultural theorist who has extensively researched and written about precarity. Simon During is not there on my slide, I'm sorry. So I'll just go a bit slower so that you can hear me out and understand and even give me your feedback on this. So Simon During examines precarity as a consequence of neoliberalism, and he says that he rather focuses on how economic instability reshapes cultural production, identity, and even belongingness. He argues that neoliberal globalization has eroded stable employment, citizenship security, as well as social trust. And therefore, people are constantly negotiating their positions in the fragmented global economies. According to During, precarity is not just material; it is psychological. It has a deep psychological impact as well, because it affects one's planning for the future, or to form stable identities, or access cultural capital. Now, in the neoliberal world, displaced individuals are often seen as, disposable labor rather than full citizens. They are disposed at any instant, and the people who are not in possession of legal papers, or refugees, or asylum seekers, these kind of displaced people, they face deeper insecurities or precarity, because they are forced into uh, these informal economies without any kind of legal protection, without any kind of nation state protection. And narratives of displacement reflect these anxieties of precarious belongingness, where the displaced population groups, or the displaced individual, constantly try to prove their worth to the nation state, whoever, whichever nation state is hosting them. Um, I would. There's a Monica Alice Brick Lane. That's a very renowned novel. We all have read it. Um, there is a kind of economic precarity that this Bangladeshi population group, the Bangladeshi immigrants in London, they encounter, especially the women. Uh, they they encounter precarity in terms of economic dependency, as well as cultural alienation, uh, which is not the case with the male immigrants. Also, referring to Sanjeev Sahota's The Year of the Runaways, he too focuses on Indian laborers who are displaced, who have migrated to Britain, and the undocumented nature of their, the undocumented workers who exist in this permanent economic precarity. And it's not just economic precarity; they are hidden. Their recognition, they are not recognized. They do not, if they do not exist on papers, they do not exist as humans. So if one's identity as a human is erased, then we can understand that what kind of situation, what kind of circumstances he or she might be facing. Yes, Hetal, I'm sorry. What was the question? What is the name? I'm sorry. So, are you keeping a track of the questions that are being posted on? I think Mr. Mishra has already answered. Sanjeev Sahota. Yes, it's Sanjeev Sahota's The Year of the Runaways, which was published in 2015. Um, Now, these characters, especially the displaced migrants, these displaced individuals who are undocumented migrants, as they are called in nation state vocabulary, they have they are rendered into precarity because they have exploitative jobs with no rights. Constantly, they are perpetually in the fear of living in the fear of deportation, and their employers are also aware of these things. They know that no matter how they treat these undocumented individuals, they would not be able to seek any kind of assistance, any kind of protection, or they would not be able to suit a file against their employers, because technically they don't exist. So, uh, quoting Simon During from Against Democracy, he says, and I quote, precarity isn't just about economic insecurity. It's about the erosion of the social and cultural conditions that make stable lives possible. Unquote. So, according to Butler had said that there is a difference between precariousness and precarity, and it is largely due to inequities that certain section of the population groups are rendered into precarity, whereas During says that uh, precarity is not always economic in nature. It is cultural, it is linguistic, and mostly it impacts the human psychologically as well. Now, Priyam, we would discuss it in a few minutes, if you may permit, because let me just finish. I have a few more aspects to discuss, and we will go into your question. I'll surely respond to your question today. So the third theorist that I had mentioned earlier was Guy Standing. And Guy Standing is an economist, and he researches predominantly on migrant laborers across the world and South globe who are displaced in the global South. And he focuses on precarity as a class issue. Now, he says that precariat is the emerging new social class, which who are who are which is being and this class is being engendered because there is a decline in the stable lifelong employment. There is a rise in temporary low wage work labor with absolutely no protections, and there is also a loss of welfare rights, housing security, and representation. Now, according to Standing, precariat includes largely displaced individuals who are refugees or contractual workers, and who transgress the political boundaries of their homeland, but for temporary work to join temporary workforces, and they labor in exploitative working conditions. There are no stable contracts, no benefits, and of course, no rights. And there is a permanent insecurity that is there. They are always at a risk of losing out on jobs. The fear of deportation is always there, and of course, there is also a social stigma of and because they are viewed as outsiders. They are not a part of the host society, or they are not considered one of the citizen group. So they are deprived of not only just citizenship but basic benefits of that a human might incur. So Standing argues that the displaced often form the lowest tier of the in the class of the precariats, as he had conceptualized, because they are denied of any kind of political not they just don't face stable it's not that they are denied of stable employment, but also because they lack political representation and also social mobility. There is no upward mobility in their lives, and there is the reinforcement of permanent. There is always a reinforcement of permanent insecurity that colors their predicament. And state policies, nation state policies too, sustain this kind of precarity, and ensuring that these displaced individual or population group remain dependent or disposable at any moment. Um, I'll quote Guy Standing from his The Precariat, the New Dangerous Class, which was published in 2011. And I quote him: "The precariat consists of millions of people floundering in a never ending cycle of job insecurity wage instability, and exclusion from basic social protections, unquote. So, Standing says that protection or the rights that a citizen enjoys or even an elite migrant enjoys in the host society, all those rights are denied to these displaced individuals. And that is what, and when there is an erosion of rights in all spheres, of course, that human would be rendered precarious. And they would be more prone to encountering violence and abuses, and they can't even seek help because technically they are not there. Technically they are not uh, uh, in the within the perimeters of the nation state structure. The nation state does not uh, hold any accountability for any kind of violence or abuse that is meted out to them. Uh, so the idea of going back to the idea of the human or uh, yeah so this slide on how narratives frame migrant precarity as both structural and personal. I would go into this tomorrow when we discuss the texts, individual texts. But I have just given a few pointers here that how these narratives, the narratives that we would be discussing, they expose they expose the the how what kind of violations humans encounter when they are forcibly displaced, and how these narratives emerging from the global south and the South Asian narratives, since we would be focusing on that, how they launch a critique of these exploitative measures that and also the lack of response from the nation state in such cases. Uh, Second. Okay, Hannah Arendt describes, since we are talking about precarity and how precarity has been conceptualized by different theorists, I have also put in Hannah Arendt, who describes statelessness in her Origins of Totalitarianism. She describes statelessness as one of the greatest forms of precarity, where individuals become rightless in the absence of a state to recognize their identity. Uh, Bhava also theorizes on the same lines. He says that he talks about hybridity, and where the displaced existence is largely between two cultures, and never fully belonging to any one or affiliating to any one culture in that manner. So when we are discussing precarity, what different theorists have conceptualized and what I have understood is that precarity is, of course, induced socially, politically, and it is that state where a human is without any rights. If I am rendered without any rights as a human, as a woman, I would be rendered into precarity. That means I would be meeting out with violence and any kind of repression, socio-political repression on a regular basis. And I would not be, and I since I am without rights, I would not be able to protect myself. So of course, I would be pushed to that periphery where I would lose the right to even fight against the violence that is being meted out to me. Okay, so these are some of the texts that I intend to allude to over this period of 5 days, and please feel free to add more from your side. Um, I have a few more, but then we shall see if time permits. I can also include a few more contemporary texts, but since these are very renowned and largely read. That's why I have included these texts. Sir, shall we? It's 7:47 almost. So, shall we? Shall I conclude here, and shall we open up for discussion? Sir, Dr. Pathak. All right. Okay. I can see the chat box. Okay. Let me just open the in-call messages. Right. So there are a lot of suggestions and comments, I believe. Uh, Harshita, have you been able to take notes? Or shall I pace it down a little more? Because I'll consider that from tomorrow onwards.
No, ma'am. I have taken the notes and thank you so much. It's a wonderful session.
Okay. Thank you, Harshita. Would love to hear from you more. Okay, so
Thank you, ma'am.
okay, can you please repeat the name of the second theorist you mentioned? Okay, which theorist on precarity? I have mentioned Judith Butler, Guy Standing, and Simon During. These are the three theorists I have mentioned. Okay, so the recent question which Aishwarya has posted is Simon. Yes, it's Simon, Simon, Simon During,
Yes,
During.
ma'am. Is it Simon? Can you spell the second name, please?
Simon,
Yes, yes.
Simon,
No, the second name, not the first name. Urine, like
Guy Standing.
no, no, no. I mean Simon. What it is? The surname. I mean.
During, During.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. That was confusing for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I will anyway post it. Don't worry,
Okay,
because
okay.
I will be constantly referring to these theorists while we are analyzing the text.
Okay, all right. And on one more question on Judith Butler on precarity and precariousness, right? What is the book you would suggest on Judith Butler for this precarious? Is it a book? So
It's
can
an
I?
essay. It's an
It's an
essay. Yeah,
okay,
yeah. So
okay.
Judith, that also I'll post. Don't worry.
All right, okay. Thank
Butler
you.
has written extensively. There are 3, 4 essays of Butler, which I'll post tomorrow on the slide itself, and you can refer to that.
All
So
right,
if
all right.
you read all these, because she has not specifically mentioned precarity in just one essay or differentiate. It's a series of essays that it's there, and there is also a book called Precarious Lives. That book is also there. So I'll post it tomorrow on the
Okay,
slide. Is that okay?
okay. Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
All
Fine,
right.
fine. Thank you.
Okay. So the question, I'll take one
Um,
question at a
um,
time.
yes. Ma'am, I had one query. Can I ask now?
Yes, yes,
Ma'am,
yes,
I
please.
mentioned some literary representations of migrant precarity, and as you have asked us to add few names as well, I
Uh-huh.
am working on Indian migrants basically for the Gulf region, and there
Okay.
are few texts that we can add here, like temporary
Yes.
people, a recent movie as well. There is one Dubai Dreams, Shamlal Puri, and there is one which is very famous recently, Deepak Unikrishnan's Temporary People.
Temporary people. Yes.
And ma'am, I just had one question to ask. Like,
Mm.
if you're going to discuss these texts as well, like there is one issue that I have faced, which is about the language of these texts, especially when we think about Indian migrant narratives of the Gulf region, because of
Mhm.
the kind of migrations that we find here, the low stream
Mhm.
kind of migration. So, are we
Mhm.
going to discuss this issue of language as well as how it folds us to the notion of precarity, like which is totally different from other forms of migration, because it is not the case with other migrants. Because I'm working on this topic for more than 2 years now, and this issue propels me to add few text in my research because the language issue is there.
Okay. So tomorrow I will discuss. I'll put a slide on Gulf as well. Although I'll be very honest, the Gulf region is not my area of expertise. But yes, I have read Temporary People, and I have read a few more authors who has written extensively on migration in the Gulf region in the Middle East. So we will be talking about these texts. And thank you for your feedback. What's your name again? I'm sorry.
Ma'am Atul Mishra.
Yeah. So Atul, we will talk about this language aspect. It would be great if you can post this on the group so that while because I'm still going back to my slides and all, it's not finally prepared. So I'll add one slide on that as well, and I'll add this to the discussion.
Sure, ma'am. Sure.
Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am. I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay. And Aishwarya had posted a question, which I was supposed to, read at that time. Why is it undocumented immigrants and not illegal? Please forgive. No, it's okay. So, okay. Yes. I am sure you are reading the newspapers these days, and we have seen that so many Indians are being deported by US. Why? Because the word that sporadically comes on all news channels and newspapers and news articles is illegal, and it's in bold. So now, just tell me something. Can human, as a human, I mean, can we call ourselves illegal? Can we be illegal? I mean, what is illegal? Illegal is something that is not legal in the plain simple words. And who has created laws? We humans. And why have we created laws, and why have we created this terminologies legal and illegal? It's because there are certain evils to just eradicate certain evils from society, right? Like theft or robbery or any kinds of violence. Those things are illegal. Anything that harms human or any other species or living species on this planet is, I think, that kind of an activity or an action can be considered illegal. How is human illegal? That I don't understand. But illegal is the terminology, is the popular term that is used for people who are transgressing the political boundaries of their own nation states and reaching host countries without any proper documents. And by proper documents, I mean they do not have the recognition or the permission of the host society to enter the host society even, or to even live there. But they are doing that. So that is why in nation state policies and terminologies, the word illegal is used. But I find the word illegal, or let's say people like us, literature students of literature who work on humanitarian crisis, who work on human rights, we find this term illegal very demeaning. It's a pejorative term, and we kind of refrain from using this term illegal. Rather, the term undocumented is, I think, serves the purpose. That because these people are without proper documents, in again referring to the nation state theory, that any person, in order to come to my nation state, in order to reside in my nation state, should have my permission, should have the permission of that nation state. And since they do not have that permission, that means they do not have the papers. So they are deprived, so they do not have the documents. So undocumented is a more, it serves the purpose of the phenomenon. Aishwarya, is that okay? We
Yes,
will
ma'am.
go into it, so
Yes.
don't worry, because we would be referring to texts where such protagonists would come up.
Thank you for answering it, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. How precarity is related to American migrants and British migrants? Aparna. Okay. Hi, Aparna. Okay. I did not really understand the question. Could you please elaborate a
Actually,
bit?
ma'am, yes,
Mhm.
ma'am. Actually, I'm working on migration. Okay,
Mhm.
so how are many? How are how their lives are being shattered, and how they are suffering for staying in a different country, in a different continent further. I mean, to be more specific. So, how precarity is? How can you relate precarity to those migrants, or those who have, and especially these migrants are having documents, they are residing there and they are having documents. So how are they suffering from this precariousness or precarity? Whichever way you define it, it serves to them.
Okay. So Aparna, I think you mean the elite migrants who
Yes,
have.
yes.
Yes.
Those who have, for example, in the namesake, the lady is having, she's having in Rice Krispies with groundnuts. Okay, so she is thinking about her homeland. So she is having paper, her husband is also having paper. So how will you relate her state of mind or her condition or her psychological condition with this precarity?
Okay, so let me make this very clear. The precarity that we are talking about is, that's why if you have noticed, I refrain from using the term migrant as well, because the term migrant is very confusing. And yes, when migration studies had emerged, when diaspora studies had emerged, this was the popular term, migrant. However, acknowledging the diversities, the kind of different predicaments that we see even within the process of displacement or migration, the word displaced, and I use the word continuously, displaced individuals or displaced population groups, they are rendered more precarious than the elite migrants who are in possession of papers, who are in possession of documents. And that is one thing which I have argued in my doctoral dissertation as well, that yes, once you are transgressing your nation state, of course you will be rendered precarious, but that is what Butler conceptualizes as a precariousness. There would be a sense of loss. You have left your family, your house, your comfortable the comfortable infrastructure which has nestled you for so many years. Of course, there is a sense of loss, there is a sense of alienation. So, in those terms, precariousness would be, that individual would be, would feel that, of course, I am alienated, I do not have all these things. So, precariousness can be used. The term precariousness or the concept of precariousness can be used because that is a kind of a vulnerability. We feel vulnerable in strange settings, in settings that are completely alien to us. Okay, we are not comfortable with those settings. So vulnerability is very natural. However, precarity, which is a socially and politically induced condition, that is encountered more on a deeper level, and or the exploitative measures are encountered by the people who are who do not belong to this category of elite migrants, who are displaced. Nevertheless, even I would not even go into transgressing political boundaries of a nation state. Even the internally displaced people. Okay, let's say we have seen during COVID, right? If we please let's hark back to that instant in 2020 when thousands of internally displaced laborers were stranded, had to, stranded on the roads, on the highways. We have seen that. So that is the kind of precarity I'm talking about. I am internally displaced, but I don't think I have been meted out with the precarity which those people had encountered in 2020. They couldn't even reach home. They did not have access to money to sustain themselves. They did not have access to food. That means the basic rights, the fundamental human rights were denied to them. And that is what creates precarity. When our rights are denied to us. But precariousness is the vulnerability that we as humans often face from any kind of, injury or any kind of loss that happens, or any kind of grief that has happened that we experience.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, is that good, Aparna?
Yes,
We
yes,
will go
ma'am.
into it further. Today is just the introductory lecture. We will, of course, go into.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay, so the next question by Simran is there any difference in the plight between voluntary and involuntary migrants? Yes, very much. Involuntary migration is, as the name itself suggests, that you are being that person is being forced to be displaced. So in this case, I would not even use the word migrant, because migration often refers to a conscious decision on the part of the individual. But forced, involuntary or forced displacement is never a decision, is never consciously taken by any individual. Okay, does it also, okay, Princey says, does it also relate to Dalit communities or Dalit writings? Well, yes, it does. However, I am not an expert in Dalit studies. So, but we can refer to it towards the end of this series. I can prepare a slide or two on the same. However, since that is not my area of expertise, I would not be able to delve into further, but I can recommend writers and theorists who constantly Sundar Sarukai, Gopal Guru, you can read, Princey, you can read their writings, and they
Yes,
talk
ma'am.
about the precarity with Dalit communities in India are facing, racial minorities, linguistic minorities. Okay, so sorry, Princey, that is not my thing. Okay. The next would be Priyam's question. Would you see Palestinian lives as precarious lives as well? I read precarious lives with respect to queerness and how certain neoliberal terms like LGBT was used to describe it. Okay. Yes, Palestinian lives. Okay, so again, they have been subjected to constant violence. So whether it's Palestine, whether it's Sri Lanka, um, wherever people, or whether it's Afghanistan. Right now, there is no war, but again, what the Taliban are doing is nothing less. They are being rendered into precarity, and that is precarity again is, I'll reiterate this, precarity is something that is relegated, into which one is relegated. That doesn't happen naturally. Okay. Today, if there is a flood or a drought, so the for the first few, of course, days, I would be rendered precarious because I would not have access to food or electricity, or even that means the basic sustenance. I might lose my shelter, but that is a natural thing. That vulnerability is very natural because there has been a drought or a flood or whatever it is. However, if there is a war, now war is not something natural. War is they are state sponsored. They are sponsored by nation states. So whenever two nation states or more than two nation states wage a war against each other, they are already rendering their citizens into precarity. Okay, and of course the citizens of the opponent nation. Ma'am, could you please elaborate on how South Asian narratives deconstruct the Western-centric narratives on migration? Yes, we will be talking about this. Since I have already mentioned that we would be going beyond the human rights formulation or how it has been defined in the Western knowledge systems. Of course, we will go into it. Migrant precariousness, emotional precarity, identity in namesake. Yes, Shaista. Okay. Of course, so when we are talking about the texts, when we are analyzing the text, we can address these concerns. Okay, precarity, yes, Rohinton mystery, yes. We will be talking about it since today there is a there was a time constraint, and I did not go into the narratives because I know that from tomorrow onwards we will be delving into the narratives on a deeper level. Okay, once again. I will share the PPTs on the final day with the organizer, and they will be able to share it with you. If that is okay?
May I
Because
ask you, may I come back to one question?
yes. Could
Which
you please
is
tell me
by
your name?
Sanjeev Vishwakarma. And this question is with reference to Simran Kaur's question, which I think I was also trying to ask. See, there are groups of people who are rendered as precariat You see either in search of job, like Pierre Bourdieu has much talked about such kind of precariat, and Guy Standing also talks about. But there is a gray area, like there are so many people who have voluntarily migrated to different other countries in search of job, rather being forced, like for example, wars or instability or civil or any kind of violence that has happened, and they have gone to those countries. So these people who have voluntarily gone to those countries, they might have lived into their own countries and they might have got better job opportunities, but still they chose to go there. For example, see some people, let's say some people from US, they are now being deported to India, and there were interviews with certain people who came back, and one of the people, his parents said that they sold a flat of around 50 lakh rupees, and they also sold land and whatever savings they had, something around 60 to 70 lakh rupees they spent to send the child in the US, and the child reached to the US in 9 months. So don't you think that this was a chosen condition where this boy or man has troubled or landed himself into trouble, and he might not have been a precariat as he happens to be because of all these neoliberal and international policies?
Okay. Yes. So the fact that he was not in possession of documents, which makes him an undocumented migrant, and that's why the deportation had happened. That uh, that itself, that process or the phenomenon itself renders one as into precarity. When the nation state policy, any nation state policy, and highlights the fact that if,
Shrita ma'am, sorry
yes,
to interrupt. We have overshot the time, so maybe this can be the last question we take today.
yes, I'll just
Yeah.
respond to Sanjeev, and we will conclude on
Yeah, then
this.
we can conclude for today. Yeah,
Yes.
thanks.
So yes, coming back. So yes, of course, these people have been. They are economically stable and everything, but the fact that they have been meted out with certain kinds of human rights abuses, even deportation, which according to me is a human right violation. That itself is the defining moment in which that person, that individual that you are talking about, has been rendered into precarity. Yes, that person can have a lot of resources, can have access to a lot of economic resources back at home, but the fact that even the access to economic resources could not save him from, or could not, give him the kind of protection from the abuse or from the violation that he has encountered, or he or she has encountered, that itself talks a lot about what kind of, that it's not just about access to resources, but it is about the rights, the erosion of rights, the rights that we tend to fight for on a regular basis. That is itself the moment where I can be rendered into, or I can be pushed into that periphery, or into that zone of being a precariat. If I lose out on my rights, if I am deprived of my rights as a human, as a migrant, or whoever it is, I would be forced into precarity. Yes. Have I been able to address your question? Your
Yes,
concern?
but the thing is that this process of violation of human rights, being deported, it comes later because the man has chosen to be there. And there's also one thing which is there. If we look at all these phenomenon through the perspective of human rights, then there is one problem. Like we are again going to blur the boundaries of human rights and nation state conditions, or let's say identity and citizenship. So many things come into conflict, and then happens like, where are states, where are governments, See, all these things are defined boundaries. When somebody is, see, when we talk about precarity, we are looking at the aspects when human rights have been violated, and when people are facing violence, it can be of any kind. Their lives become ungrievable, as Judith Butler also writes in her books. So here is a chosen condition where, which comes later, like his rights are violated, his life becomes grievable, and he has been deported in chains. So many things happen. That is also part of it. But it begins to the point where this man's, let's say, being a precariat or being subject to violence, it seems to be more voluntary, even if we say that it's his violation of human rights, but it's voluntary because it happens later and choices were made earlier.
I completely agree on that note, sir. The thing is that when a person chooses certain modes of precarity in order to fulfill the desires, especially in case of displacement, in the case of displacement, let's say we have all after the film came out, we are all quite familiar with this term donkey routes, right? So that, which means that in order to reach the country of your choice, the destination of your choice, you are actually traveling the entire world, because you do not have the permission, or you do not have the papers, the documents that gives you the permission to reach that host country. Nevertheless, you are undertaking a journey voluntarily, and because you want to reach that that specific nation state. So of course, in that case, in those contexts, the individual is completely aware that the road ahead is full of pebbles. He or she would be injured, would be wounded, or even might face death in order to reach there. But what happens is, sometimes it is voluntary, but many a times it is out of the fear of being persecuted, or it is out of the fear of not being able to survive in one's nation state, that people are forced to undertake those journeys. And it is largely the cases with refugees or asylum seekers. Let's say the people of Afghanistan during the Taliban takeover, we have seen, how they wanted to clutch to the 1 or 2 aeroplanes that had come to rescue them. Why? Because it was not a choice to leave Afghanistan, but it was the fear of being again controlled by a very exploitative regime. So I think of course it is blurred, everything, human rights, or these are, I cannot say that the narratives of precarity are watertight compartments. They only talk about one instance of precarity. No. Precarity there are several layers of precarity. Even Butler talks about it. Okay, so when we analyze the narratives, or when we delve into the narrative, this would be more transparent. So, as Puneet sir also says that we have transgressed the time limit today, so I would rather welcome tomorrow's discussion can open on this note, and we can continue tomorrow. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Sir?
Yes, ma'am. I think we can conclude for today.
All right. Thank you so much. And I will meet you all tomorrow. And please, we can continue from here. And I would love more such feedbacks and questions and comments. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much, Sunita ma'am, for this wonderful session. Thank you to all the participants for joining us. And please remember a small reminder that the link remains the same on all the days, and the time is also the same. The link will not change. Feedback form will be shared on the last day of the FTP once the last session is finished. So we'll meet again tomorrow. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you, ma'am.